Lovely. Thank you, Erica. And love to see everybody this morning. And just give me a thumbs up that that presentation's come up. Fabulous. Great. Um, well, I know some of you been involved in the conversations about this so far, came to the consensus workshop. But I've taken the view here, we're going to start from first principles. And what I'm aiming to do here is just tell a bit of a story about it. You know, where do we think this has come from? What do we think it's going to be about? And what are the opportunities, given the nature of government policy making, which is sort of often tends to leak out a bit at a time. But just first to say, maybe what do I bring to this conversation today? First one, I think, is a career-long interest and practice in professional development for certainly with teachers and with artist educators. And I'm absolutely fascinated and about how do we support people to change? How do we build capacities and skills? I've always been interested in the whole system-wide approach. How do we support at scale and change at scale, and policy as well? But we won't talk too much about that. But I'm sure if anyone wants to, we can do that offline. And also as a trustee of the CLA, we've been sort of quite connected to this and getting bits of, let's say, inside info, which is quite helpful. I'll share as much of that as I can. And also being tremendously dedicated to the success of this region and the young people here. So hopefully those things is what I'm bringing today. Right, so that's the agenda, and maybe I'll chat for 20, 25 minutes. If there's other stuff that comes up, then we will pick those up in the rest of the session. Right then, let's start off with these ministers. So who's responsible for this ultimately in government? Well, until Friday, it was Catherine McKinnell, who's the Minister of State for Education. But she was her services were dispensed with on Friday as part of the reshuffle, and we have a new minister now, and this is someone called Georgia Gould. And for those of you who are on New Labour Watch, she's part of a sort of grandee family of New Labour people. Sir Philip Gould's her dad, who was Tony Blair's pollster. So she's kind of, royalty when it comes to Labour politics and has been promoted from within the Cabinet Office. So what does the Minister of State do? If anybody thinks they're busy, have a look at this job description. These are all the areas that the minister who reports to Bridget Phillipson is responsible for. And the bits I've highlighted connect to the National Centre. So initial teacher training and incentives to attract people into the profession. You'll know that it has been a real challenge to bring people into teaching. And the Labour Party, the Labour government want an additional 6,500 teachers coming in. Teacher retention and ensuring that teachers have a training entitlement. Just going down a bit, curriculum and assessment. I'll say something around the curriculum and assessment review. So that's really what children do during the school day and how is it assessed and how are teachers assessed. And creative education sort of popped in there. And that's interesting, isn't it? And then as you go down, access to sport, arts and music in education, working with other departments who will be the DCMS and other people. So those are three sort of strands that the National Centre reflects. Right, so this dropped very interestingly. No one knew this was coming. And this is, I was looking in Hansard, and this is how the announcement came. So Jonathan Davis, that tremendous MP for Mid Derbyshire, wrote a question to Catherine at the time, Catherine McKinnell. So, what steps is the minister taking to improve partnerships between schools and cultural providers through the National Centre for Arts and Music? And I can imagine Catherine McKinnell at the time said, "Oh, I welcome my honourable friend's question, and I'm delighted to announce on the 18th of March, the department announced our intention to launch a new National Centre for Arts and Music Education. A key part of the centre's role, helping schools maximise opportunities available with and through the cultural sector, through partnerships and relationships." And I thought this was quite interesting, which both schools and cultural providers tell us is needed. So somewhere or other, all of these this lobbying and questioning and from all parts has got through. All right, that sounds good. So maybe we'll spend this next little bit thinking about what's the problem we're trying to resolve. And many of you will, well, all of you will be a part or will see a different part of this system. So I'll be very interested when we chat in a bit what you think of this and is there something else that you think is important? Because so often we just jump in with solutions, don't we, without really thinking, what is it, the problem we're trying to solve? Uh, First of all, this comes in a long line of initiatives. And for those of you who have kind of longer memories or have been around on the earth a bit longer, you'll remember sort of early 2000s, or I think it was the late 1990s, Ken Robinson's reports called All Our Futures, Creativity and Culture, which led to the rise of a number of initiatives that we have now. Before then, well, it depends how far you want to go back. And that sort of set the tone for new Labour policy making. And then Michael Gove came in, tremendously prepared actually with a very radical, disruptive agenda for how we wanted to reshape the school system. The Blob, well, who's the Blob? This is written by Toby Young, this article or this document, and the Blob was everybody, all schools, all the DfE, all the government, everybody that was trying to stop the Gove agenda, which, as you know, led to the breakup of local authority control, academies, a new curriculum, a new modes of assessment, and the privileging of knowledge-rich education based on quite traditional pedagogies. The introduction of EBAC. So there were certain subjects that were privileged and inspected and others that were not. And I remember a written question or an answer from him saying, dismissing drama, oh, that's just pedagogy. And they weren't, the tide turned against sort of arts learning. Not that they ever said it wasn't important, but actually as that being the core part of the curriculum was not seen as significant as other subjects. And now we're at a point of turn again. So just to sort of summarize why now, and I've taken some of this from the CLA's report card, and hopefully all of you received the CLA's briefings. The purpose of CLA in some ways is to produce the data, is to be an impartial, well, we're not impartial, are we? But to a trusted source of data which people can build policy on. So the impact of those choices since 2010, we've seen the decline of status and access to art subjects. Those are few of the indicators. Nearly half of schools, no pupils entering for music GCSE. The same for drama GCSEs. The reason I talk about those is there's very little data on primary. We know very, very little about what's actually happening in the primary sector. Dance at secondary schools, as Paul, who's on the call, will attest, is nearly eroded. It's hanging on, but it's nearly eroded. National curriculum demands and the knowledge-rich teaching is seen as a barrier by many teachers and primary as well, saying we feel overloaded. That's not actually the case, but perception is reality. So where do I fit all these things in? There's been a huge loss of specialist teachers and a reduction in the amount of jobs. So typically in a secondary school where you might have had 3 art teachers, they've now got 2. Where you had 2, there might be 1. And there's just and the sense of opportunities is less than it was. There are fewer young people progressing into HE in arts and humanities. And you will all be aware of the amount of courses that have been closing recently and the amount of job losses, sort of expertise in the arts and humanities sector. So it takes a while, doesn't it? I mean, this probably washed over 3 years ago. So those reforms took 7, 8 years to really work through the system. There's absolutely inadequate training of new teachers in primary to teach arts subjects, unless there's a few specialists. And actually, there is a crisis in specialist teacher training and recruitment. Last year, the government met less than half of its recruitment for art and design teachers. And just to conclude, what CLA data is suggesting is the most significant impact in schools in terms of children or young people most likely to study an arts subject to GCSE is the Northwest, the Northeast, and the West Midlands. And there's something that needs to be explored further about why, what that relationship is that to do with income levels? Is it to do with what's happening there? So we're kind of in the firing line. And that was the main recommendation from this year's report card was we need a new commitment from DfE, because if we don't get onto teacher training, there will be nothing left to build around, or not enough to build around. Okay, so that is, I think, sort of where we are. But okay, well, what's the good news? So let's remember Catherine McKinnell, who was in post until Friday. Well, here was her speech that she gave, and I've tried to sort of, maybe that game when you play hide and seek and you go, you're really cool, are you getting hotter, are you getting warmer? So I've tried to describe it in that way of getting a bit warmer. So okay, we know the Labour government is a mission-based government. So anybody remember the 5 missions? Right, there's no test. But one of the key ones for us is breaking down barriers to opportunity. And that is similar for all governments. They just call it different things. But particularly, this is particularly personal for the Labour Party. Great. Breaking down barriers. Next thing is, all the evidence shows the biggest difference on children's attainment and success in school is a high quality teacher. Day in, day out. And especially for those children who have SEND or from backgrounds where education is not as valued, or those that come from financial disadvantage compared to their peers. We know that. Then they move on. Okay, great. So that's principle 1, high quality teaching. Then we want a curriculum that's broad. You'll remember there's been a lot of discussion around the sort of narrow and deep and mastery and focusing on a selective few privileged subjects. Not now. More inclusivity, more innovation, more breadth. And finally, and this was not from her speech at the Academy show. This was a press release of a music pilot that came out last year. The arts are one of the most important ways to help children and young people to develop creativity and find their voice. Find their voice. The previous Standards Minister, Nick Gibb, who was in and out for about a decade, I'd never heard him talk about finding voice or some of the other things that the arts can do beyond achieving exam success. All right, now it starts to hot up a bit. The curriculum, assessment and inspection drives everything that happens in the school. The curriculum is the whole planned set of activities from the moment a child walks through the door or the school gate, and that could be 8 o'clock in the morning, to when they leave, and that could be 5 o'clock. Assessment, of course, is how do you find out what kids know, what they've progressed, and how they're achieving. And you'll remember from what we have at the moment is lots of exams, lots of writing, lots of exams. We need to find out who's the cleverest and who's the stupidest. So systems of assessment that feel quite traditional. An inspection, as you know, Ofsted. I think that they're a bit less hawkish at the moment, but it does introduce an element of fear and jeopardy and worry into the system. But change is coming. Becky Francis, who's an eminent educational leader and is chair of the Education Endowment Fund, was tasked by Bridget Phillipson to lead a complete review of the curriculum assessment. And I'm sure many of you on this call put some sort of ideas into that curriculum review. This is about looking at how does the curriculum need to change so it will deliver that broader curriculum. And this is a quote: "So young people do not miss out on creative subjects such as music, art and drama, as well as sport." So something's got to give, hasn't it? It just can't, the content is going to give, or the way schools plan and think about what they do with young people. And then finally, um, by re-establishing the arts as an integral part of the curriculum, great. Re-establishing an integral part of the curriculum is raising the status of studying creative subjects and ensuring the arts remain a powerful force in shaping the nation's future. I mean, that's kind of fighting talk, isn't it? That's come out of the curriculum and assessment review brief. So that feels to me that is the most arts-friendly language that I've seen in the last 15 years. So far, so good. And there's more. The government is also developing a new enrichment framework. And enrichment is seen as those activities that add that shine, that polish, that ability to develop those skills that will support you in life. And many of us who were as young people involved in the arts, whether that was in school, out of school, will understand what that means. But it's also seen as one of the things that private schools and public schools value particularly and give an edge to. So there'll be new recommendation around what looks like high quality, what things are working, and what other people are doing. And part of that is about connecting schools together, so there's more intelligence that passes through the system. But I love this quote from Jeff Barton, he's now one of the governors at the RSC. He's very active in a lot of policy debate, influence. He used to run the teaching union. He says, you don't get extracurricular arts without curricular arts, because then you haven't got a workforce to do it. So it's all very well focusing on that, but you've got to get the core first. So what models and evidence do we build on? How does it fit into DfE structures? Since about 2015, there's been a whole group of subject hubs have been developed, and these are focused on teacher training, sharing innovations, and sharing resources to improve teaching. And this is all part of rewiring the school-led improvement system, where schools, multi-academy trusts take a greater lead. You'll see the ones that are established. The Maths Hub, I think, was established in 2016, and these are regarded as really very good by schools. You can turn to them for support, you get resources, and I think the Maths Hub has a national network. I think there are 40 physical hubs led by schools with outstanding practice. They work in partnerships. These are the things that they provide, and they've had impact. So they offer professional development, and it looks like lots of different forms. So the National Centre fits sort of into that bucket of hubs. Yeah, we understand what they are. We understand why they're there. Key takeaway from the National Centre is that it is all about classroom teachers. They will be the main recipients of activity. Children will be the beneficiaries of their new practice. So this is all about classroom teachers. And just to summarize the challenge as I see it, you've got a new school system still working itself out, school-led improvement system still sort of rewiring and replumbing. You've got new expectations and requirements for teaching the arts in schools, and that will come through the curriculum assessment review, the enrichment framework, and an expectation that it will impact on pupils relatively quickly. You've got a teaching workforce with shredded capacity, and there's been sparse investment, very low priority, and there's lots of evidence to show that. Recently, for the APPG on art and design, Professor Pat Thompson did a rapid review. NCAD presented that. So there's lots of evidence that shows that is the case. And look at the size of the workforce as well. If you just look at the bottom, there's 240,000 teachers in nursery and primary. And there's a lot of schools. So it's a big workforce. Not all of those people will be teaching the arts, but many primary teachers will have responsibility. but a completely inadequate level of CPDL, and L meaning learning, supply of sufficient quality. When we were looking for what art CPD was out there for primary teachers, there was nothing beyond a bit of online coaching. So there's very little that's provided. It isn't organised, and still, I think, despite all the efforts that many of us on this call have been making, there is still kind of weak connectivity between the cultural sector and school sector. It's a bit transactional at times, but there are some outstanding examples and excellent practice that does exist that I don't think has yet been scaled or has been given the value or the recognition that it deserves. So there's lots of that out there. I'm sure we could all point to that. And the other bit is you've got a tension. So you've got a market-led system of competition between schools. They're competing for pupils, particularly at the moment because there's falling roles, demographics against them. They're competing to open new schools, free schools, versus a need for collaboration in a system. So there are internal tensions. Okay. Just take a breath on that. So here is a proposal from government. As you'll remember, Catherine McKinnell said, the cultural sector and education sector tell us this is needed. So what do we know? So we know there's a tender process out at the moment. They're looking for people with capacity to meet that kind of need that we've talked about. It's about the delivery of art subjects. It's not about creativity, creative teaching and learning, although that might come out of what you do in the arts. It's about subjects. They said initially it was online, but they've rolled back a bit on that. It could be a whole variety of different ways of CPD-L happening and being connected for teachers. It's got to be about all teachers as well, so an offer for everyone. Promoting opportunities, okay, for children to do more. The word boosting partnerships between schools and cultural providers is interesting. So there's some kind of brokerage, matchmaking, connecting function. Be the DfE's delivery partner for the existing Music Hub program. I said a little bit about that, but ACE currently do that, and they've been doing that since the Music Hubs were developed some years ago. The restriction around the National Centre is only for children aged 5 to 16. So not early years, not into A-level, BTECs, technical qualifications, etc. Just for 5 to 16. But of course, a centre can choose to do other things if it wants to. What are the priorities? And these are some slides that I screenshotted off the DfE's presentation and kind of annotated. So 3 things: support excellent teaching. You'll notice there they make reference to brilliant. There's to support access to brilliant teacher development provision available from others. So there's also providing it, but also bringing to the attention of stuff that's already happening that's good. Developing sustainable partnerships, right? So that boosting, now we've got bolstering collaboration between schools and cultural organisations. And then we've got promoting, then there's a promotion and a hearts and minds job involved, and also a signposting of careers guidance as well, of which there's been a lot of work, hasn't there, on creating resources and offering insights for young people to know how to get careers. So those are the priorities. That's their very sort of, that's how it all refers back to the breaking down to the opportunity mission. But I kind of like this on the right-hand side. They talked about benefits of arts ed. When did you last see a government thing that talked about arts for art's sake? That actually it's good in and of itself, just to get involved in cultural development for all the benefits that's bring. And then they do a sort of bingo card list of everything else that the arts can do on the right-hand side. But what it says to me is that actually there's all this lobbying has been listened to. You know, all the arguments that have been put forward have been heard. What are the principles? I mean, I think the top two are the most are the ones that are fundamental, which is whatever it does, it's got to draw on the evidence. And it's about supporting teachers with teaching and learning. So their pedagogy, what do they actually do with children? How does that happen? Um, and what do they understand about arts pedagogies? Because they're very different in drama, in art, in dance, in music, in film, etc. And my experience is that a lot of those theoretical bases that teachers I would have met 20 years ago has gone now. Teachers that are coming in are now taught very much the practical elements. There's not a lot of theoretical time spent. And the focus has got to be, does this help pupils make good progress or doesn't it? How can this be translated relatively easily and quite quickly so that teachers are doing more interesting and more engaging things and better teaching and learning so that pupils make progress? The key bit for me is it's got to be this incentive's got to be connected. It's got to be collaborative, and it absolutely needs the cultural sector to play with it and engage with it and work with it. It cannot be just a one-way thing. So we'll be very interested to see how whoever gets appointed behaves in that way. Priority one, just unpacking it a little bit, is there's obviously they'll be offering their own activities, but also there's creating and curating CPD resources. So you may have resources that are available, and quality assuring as well. It'll set a standard for what looks like and what is regarded as high quality professional development and learning. So it's not just any old stuff, because we know that any old stuff doesn't work, but there'll be a QA function in there as well. Developing sustainable partnerships. Again, this is a couple of the duties that are there. Building sustainable partnerships between schools and cultural organisations that are long-term and localised. Hallelujah! Don't we all want those? And maximising the convening power. So the centre will have a broad convening role. Well, what would it do with that? Would that be about setting a broader national agenda for how everybody is pulled together across the country that's doing this work? What might that look like? Is that a knowledge production and sharing function? Could be many things. And a mapping of existing resources. So it's got a duty to promote and engage parents, particularly talk about young people and parents. So there's a cell that's got to happen, but they're going to be asking what is out there and how do we know that it's any good? What evidence have we got to support it? And again, if nobody provides anything, then it won't, then it can't get mapped and it can't get shared. So those are some of the functions I think that look quite interesting. And just to say as well, music hubs is in the mix, which makes it very different from the maths hubs and the other ones, because the leadership and the sort of function, the grant arrangements and the leadership of the music hubs will shift over to this centre. There's 43 hubs across England. They are still the most privileged part of the arts sector, of the arts ed sector. I think nearly in the course of the Music Hub programme, which came about because local authorities collapsed and standard funds were removed. It's been over £1 billion of investment into the music hubs to promote and provide musical opportunities and musical education. But they went through a huge amount of change last year. I chair the Black Country Music Hubs board, and I just know how weary those people are of rebidding, filling in enormous amounts of paperwork, and they're just weary of change. So does anybody recognize that? But the key word is the centre role is to manage the programme for DFE, but also collaborate with the music hubs as well. So that maybe suggests, is there opportunity for a different kind of relationship with the hubs? So they're in the mix, and they might be, we don't know what the funds is, but they could be a huge amount of the resource that sits in that national centre. How do you make that work? This is where we are in the timetable. We're coming towards the end of this presentation now. So here we are. The ITT, the invitation to tender, comes out in September at some point. And when that comes out, the final specification will be known, the level of funding that's involved, and how DFE think it will be managed, what kinds of targets will be involved, what kinds of accountability measures will be involved. So we wait to find out that. Cultural Learning Alliance, we were a bit concerned that one of the problems of this is there was no narrative behind it. DFE weren't sort of telling that story of where it came from, so it just sort of arrived from nowhere. And we asked DFE if they would find it useful if we provided some ideas, and they said useful, but we're not commissioning it or sanctioning it. And we had some consensus workshops across the country, led by the brilliant Kaz Brader, are asking the questions: what do we want from a national centre? What principles and what functions and what can it be? And that's just being finalised now before we share that out. The big one was, oh, please don't make mistakes of the past. Please learn from what we've done before. If you don't do it that way, because we know we've been there and it didn't work. And also, we know there are a number of bidders are now emerging for this contract. Those that are in have put in expressions of interest, and we know that ranges from commercial bidders who are already running some of the hubs. We know some universities are coming forward. We know there's a few NPOs that are interested as well. So there's a bit of shakeout happening, but it's one of those processes where everyone says, will you come with us? Will you be part of our partnership? And if you do, will you be exclusive? So it's a very interesting process of how that will happen. And again, ultimately, what DFE really, really want. So this is the final slide. Okay, so hopefully that has laid out a story for you in a way that feels you might want to see that there is something in it for you or something you've got to bring. They're going to be asking, what are you all up to? What are your intentions? What have you got? So if you are doing any continuing professional development and learning with teachers, what do you know about that? How do you connect that to the evidence base around effective teaching, about effective professional development? Is there something else you want to grow through this? Is this an opportunity for you to scale up what you're doing? Developing partnerships with schools. Again, what are your plans? What impact do you want to achieve? They talked about long-term but localized in the briefing. So what could that look like if if we had a big partner like this helping us? Where would you want to get to? And a partnership, again, is not something where we are transactional, where we're asking to be let in the door. Something that's built around pupils making progress in the arts, teachers teaching more effectively, and remember and arts for art's sake is okay in there as well. You remember that one? Careers guidance. Have you got anything around that you're interested in either bringing or developing? And just think more broadly, what could you contribute to the development of the centre if there was an opportunity? What can you bring to it? We want this to be evidence-led. What could it connect up with research that you've got? Could it connect up with effective practices you've got? And how do you know they are? And what might you be able to do to prep this autumn? the centre is due to, the contract looks like it's going to be awarded in, let me just go back. So the contract is awarded in February 2026. The new people will come in, or in April, I would imagine, start in April, and then delivery or some kind of activity is due to be in September of next year. And there's one organisation who are bidding called Etio, who are part of Tribal PLC. They run the Maths Hub. They're already advertising for directors of music education, drama education, and art and design, but they don't have any jobs to offer. So they're trying to build their team to put into the contract. And if they get it, then these jobs will appear. So there are, that it's going to happen, and it's going to be really serious. So what kind of prep we do? Are you, what are you going to do to prep for this, or put it onto your agenda? And we know that the national organisations are already doing this already. They're already in conversations. They're already with DfE. We know that they're prepping that. So we can as well, can't we? But just to remind us, this region, I think needs this most, along with the Northwest and the Northeast. So what's the possibility of us being sort of first movers, better connected around this agenda? Right. And that's it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Rob. That was really, really interesting. Yeah, and so interesting. Just thinking back, gosh, in our career, 20 years, and yeah, all comes full circle, hey. But then this is an interesting model, isn't it? Have we got any questions anybody in there? I mean, I was interested in who the providers were, but you gave me some of that. Who was kind of who was on your radar in terms of provision? You've answered that question. Anyone else? I can't see anybody at the minute. I'm looking.
I think there was something really interesting, Erica, that, but not question really, more a comment on what Rob said right at the beginning about actually sometimes we're so quick to rush for solutions that we forget to really understand the problems. And I think that there's also some interesting reflections here about what is the impact? Why aren't we having the desired impact we want at the moment, or what is that lack of impact? Yeah, so there's some interesting thoughts there, and I think there's something about until the value is put back in schools, we're always going to have this uphill struggle. So whilst we are the poor relation, to the EBAC subjects, it's hard to get teachers out for CPD, for instance, because budgets are so tight. It's hard to get cover and all those kind of things. It's hard to get budgets aligned. We've got a school in our Sept whose total budget for performing arts for the year is £200 for all the kids in a massive secondary school. So there's so many prongs to look at, isn't it? But there's something about the national challenges, but our specific regional challenges that put us in that bottom three, which is an unenviable place to be for any of us, really. So yeah, it's not really a question. It's more just a comment about, there's something I think we all need to do that looks regionally and nationally and also locally about what those real challenges are, so that then we can go, okay, what is it we're doing, where, when, and why? Because there's something very particular, and we've started to talk as a group of SEPs about that, the ones that are left, about that as well. So I think some of this conversation, we need to join it with some of that conversation too.
Yeah, a couple of things on that, Lisa. The mutterings are that the EBAC may well be abolished as an accountability measure.
Can't come soon enough.
Yeah, and that may be a recommendation, because at some point Bridget Phillipson's got to show her hand, hasn't she?
Yeah.
And that's being muttered. And the consensus workshop that was run in Bradford was all the Northern LSEPs, because Curious Minds, I think, who are also putting themselves in the frame to bid, help to liaise with the LSEPs across there. So those views are built into the feedback for the consensus workshop. But
yeah.
Fab. Thank you. Rachel, did you have your hand up? Did I miss? Yeah, Rachel.
Yeah, I just had a really quick question. Is it envisaged that there is a physical centre a place that this is a physical, a physical thing as well as a delivery organisation?
I think what the DfE have asked for, Rachel, is proposals of a model. So the Maths Hub exists as a really excellent website with loads of resources with 40 physical or hubs across the country. It all depends what money's involved. I think the Maths Hub has been very well resourced. Let's see what money's involved, because initially it was all the CPD will be online, and at which point most people responding and said, well, then you're only going to have this amount of impact. And DfE said, well, okay, what else have you got for us? So we'll see.
It's a difference in language, isn't it? Because Hub, I suppose, leads you to, that suggests it's online, whereas National Centre seems to suggest a physical thing as well. I suppose my thought was that there's an opportunity for a region to host a physical facility, as well as there is an organisation to be the delivery model or the deliverer of the facility itself or the service itself.
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar to the schools that would host the hub in their areas for the maths or the literacy hubs. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. You'd very much like to think it's not in the capital city.
Indeed.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. I've got a question in the chat, which came through. I wonder if it's a question. So we'll be good to know if they plan on working with existing cultural education partnerships that have been obviously supporting that work for a while. The ones that we have, as Lisa alluded to, the ones that are still operating in the region. And then I've got Sally asking. I've got a question after that as well.
I mean, I would imagine that it depends who's bidding. So there'll be some that are already very aware of this network, and there'll be others who are learning quickly. So Etio, for instance, it's a commercial organisation, provides tech solutions to education and other things. They've got their business development people are learning about all this quite rapidly, and they'll be open to it. I think that they need allies. That the centre needs allies, not just to deliver commercially, but also if we're going to achieve the values and the purpose of it, which is about children having better opportunities. So I would imagine they'd be very open to all of that, but that may well come out when the mapping process.
And interesting, I suppose that's again another thing, Lisa in the network. I know Lucy's still on the call as well, the CEPs in the region, to just think about being coordinated and have some of that messaging ready is probably a good time as well. Sally, you've got your hands up. I'm just plugging my laptop in.
Just a couple of things. I think one was around the kind of how the CSEP, particularly if West Midlands is one of the areas that's going to have to benefit from this the most. I mean, we have some fantastic CSEPs in the region. We got a very good one as well. So I don't know, Rob, is there still a place for advocacy, or is it kind of too late at this point in terms of trying to, because if you have a group of CSEPs from a region that's a priority that goes to DfEs and says, well, because my worry is the kind of learning from past mistakes issue. So it's kind of like, well, this is what we don't want, this is what we want, this is what we think would work here, and these are the kind of specific concerns. So it's just kind of having, I guess, that dialogue with DfE, and then like whose job is it really? And also, I used to work with a lot with the music education hubs, obviously at the Arts Council, and it's a beast. So my other concern is that they're going to be so consumed with just running it's a huge machinery. It's a huge thing. So it's going to completely consume potentially this new agency unless it becomes massive. So I think it's just kind of the scale, and the age is another concern. So 5 to 16 is limited, and then what? So I don't know. I think the advocacy point is probably the best, and it's Culture Central could be the one who's promoting this, or are there others? And I'm sure the skills agencies are pushing and influencing as well. But just for your thoughts.
I suppose just going back in order, 5 to 16 is what DfE will fund. for the professional development. But as you know, music hubs have a preschool to 25 remit, so that already doesn't work. In terms of advocacy, I would say that because the bidding process has now begun in earnest, the conversation would be with either those that we know are bidding or the successful organisation once it's emerged. I think DFE now it's got its spec out, and it will be right. You answer to that. So I think the advocacy moment is over in terms of what's in that spec because it's already out.
Yeah.
I think it's all to be shaped. And as you say, one of the great unknowns is what other resources there outside of the Music Hub resource. And when they're thinking about managing the Music Hub contract, what kinds of change, how light touched, how different would it be? Because as you know, there was how many music officers were there funded through the DFE, or are there at the moment? Arts Council, there's a good network, isn't there?
Yeah. There used to be
So
at least 4 in each area, so you can do the math.
And finally, yes, absolutely. I think the potential to join up and have much more coordinated voice with the National Centre is a real opportunity and a real strength that we can utilize in this region because it is so connected and because we've got the personal relationships and we've got some brilliant stuff happening as well. We all know that. So yeah, I think we're really well placed to have a much more streamlined and joined up conversation with the people that are running the centre, because you can imagine, can't you, whenever it is February the 20 something, I open this email, Ray, I've won. Oh, I've won. So there's a hell of a lot to happen quite quickly with that centre. So yeah.
And I think it's also like, let's say it's a university in, I don't know, Newcastle.
So University of the West England, for instance.
Well, let's say it's University of West England. So it's like, okay, well, what does that mean for us as a region? They don't know anything about that. That's always going to be geography is always going to be another problem with this, isn't it?
So it could be, but as Rachel was saying, how it depends what the plans are for how they organise themselves and get regional intelligence or regional presence. I think the idea that, well, they're going to have national presence because of the music hubs, aren't they? Anyway, so yeah, I mean, it might be, as you go home tonight thinking, how on earth would I organise this if I was? How would I rewire this? The plumbing of this centre.
Thanks, Rob. I've got Joe. In practical terms, do we know that this will be free at the point of engagement for schools?
I imagine that the funded offer of the centre probably will be, but they've also been minded, or the DFE have reminded them that it's also got to work within the existing infrastructure. So there'll be others that will have a charging model. We do, and if you have a load of free stuff offered by the centre, then that might blow that market apart. So it's a balance they've got to make. And it all depends what it is that they can deliver on the budget they've got, which they don't know at the moment, or where they start. So watch this space, Joe, I think. But that is the DFE are aware of that tension of that free versus market.
Brill. And then Bhavik has just talked about the Arts Council sort of cultural education network, and I suppose whether there's a plan to work with the Arts Council on that or not.
Well, the Arts Council themselves may be putting an application in, I don't know. But it would be a very foolish centre that wouldn't try and connect with all the best bits of the infrastructure that are there.
Yeah.
As long as it's about supporting the key deliverables, which is professional development and learning for teachers and the impact on children 5 to 16 within the DFE funded. So yeah, I think the challenge with this is mission creep, isn't it? That it all becomes about everything and then becomes so indistinct that nobody really knows what it's there for and trying to solve everyone's problems. But this is quite specific at the moment. But it could do a range of other things.
And do we think that the centre could, it's a question from Deandra, it would deliver activity directly, or might it look, do you think, to outsource arts organisations and specialists? I mean, I think I know what your answer is going to be.
I mean, I suspect there will be things that they will deliver themselves. So if we take the example of Etio, that's recruiting for directors across the subjects, they will set out, these are the standards we want, and these are our people to deliver certain things. But it may be that they work with cultural sector to do aspects of it. But so little is known. I mean, so little is known about what is offered collectively across the country. There's no data. There's no sight of it at all. But they do have a role to broker and promote the offers of the sector in professional development as well. Yeah. And you will be familiar from various research reports that there are some of the national organisations that do this, that have made a real commitment to this work and are doing it extremely well and can scale nationally. Others doing brilliant work, but the scale is not possible. It's very localised. So we'll see, won't we? We don't know what budget they might have to commission things anyway. But I don't think what they will do is pay for somebody's education programme.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, if you're looking at just while you've been chatting, just having a kind of a look at the stuff that sort of Etio, for example, are doing, it's interesting for everybody to sort of, I suppose, have a quick look at and see about what, if that's a sort of model that they've looked at before, then it's interesting to check out. And I think Anthony's put something in around the Maths Hub as well, so for people to sort of have a look at. I'm very just conscious we've got 5 minutes. Is there any sort of last final questions for Rob? No. Okay, thank you so much, Rob. It's really, really useful. I think we'll have a little think about sort of any role that Culture Central has just in bringing people together. But I do so know that there is obviously the network of the LSEPs that's happening in and around, and how maybe we can just feed into some of that work around that you guys are doing. And Anthony and I, obviously very interested in creative education, as it being both of our backgrounds, and also the work that's happening across the region. So thank you. Just as a little bit of an update, sorry for those of you who might have dialed in as well to see Martin Sims from Create Central. And there have been some changes at Create Central, and you might have seen that Martin is now the head of production office for the regional office, so has been getting used to his new job and will be doing a session for us about that work and sort of TV and film in the region and production. So we'll keep you updated in that. Next crew session is another Arts Connect previous employee, Lucy Carlton Walker from Warwickshire Libraries, who are the MPO for libraries in the region and one of the only ones nationally. And we are working to look at how we can connect more with libraries, as libraries are sort of really cultural spaces where lots of people do that work, do cultural activity. So yeah, how can the cultural sector connect more with libraries? So that will be next session. And just to flag, on the 20th, for those of you who haven't already signed up, we have a Creative West Midlands workshop day, which is our report into audiences and participation and creativity across the West Midlands, really live in terms of the conversations that we're talking around engagement and how creative people feel and the opportunities to do creative activity. So that's the 23rd of September at the Telegraph in Coventry in the afternoon. Anthony, are you right to, you've put it in the chat, there we are, fantastic. If you want to sign up to that, that's fabulous. And obviously if you are new to Culture Central, please feel free to sign up to our newsletter. It's been lovely to have you all here. And you've got lots of great comments in the chat. The recording will go up in the next couple of days, so and we'll put it in our newsletter as well. So yeah, thanks everyone.